Well, this was hyped as one of the games of the year in international rugby. South Africa versus New Zealand at Ellis Park in Johannesburg. Does it get any bigger than that? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through my post-game show and talk to you about the game in detail and give you my thoughts. Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, I'm a Kiwi bloke who's retired. I'm living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico and I love the game of rugby. I've started this YouTube channel just because I want to play a small role in helping the great game grow across the world. So if you're passionate about the game and you love to share your thoughts and opinions, then this channel might be a fantastic fit for you. Now we're going into this brilliant game today, much expectation, much hype about the game between perhaps the two greatest rugby playing nations in the world, South Africa and New Zealand, at Ellis Park. And it was 30 years since democracy hit South Africa, and what an anniversary. What a game to have on such a momentous occasion for the South African people and the South African nation. It was absolutely fantastic to see the pre-game exploits that were going on there at Ellis Park, that's for sure. Okay, so let's get into it. 107th game between these two great rugby nations, and it was all on the line, wasn't it, after that Rugby World Cup final last year. Would it be as close? Well, we had to wait and see. Now the game got underway and it was the All Blacks that took on the first point of possession in this game. Yes, they started getting a lot of ball and they started camping themselves down in the South African territory. It looked like it was going to be a very comprehensive beginning for the All Blacks, and I'd said in my pre-game video that I thought it was going to be paramount for the All Blacks to score first in this game and also to put a number of points on the board. If they were going to be able to do that, I thought they had a chance of sticking in this game with South Africa. But there was a lot going on in this game in the early stages, and I thought the All Blacks handled it very well. Ethan Blackadder started to show us that he was up for this game, as was Ardie Savea, both doing some really good carries in the first couple of minutes of the game. But the other thing that impressed me was the South African defence. The All Blacks were throwing everything at South Africa, and perhaps some other teams would have opened up and let the opposition in for a try, but not the South African team. They pushed back on the All Blacks, and the All Blacks just had to be patient, and that's one of the things that I enjoyed watching them do in the first couple of minutes. They weren't getting rattled, that they weren't getting across the South African line, and they kept putting pressure on going forward and trying different plays out the back. It was a good start by the All Blacks, exactly what they wanted to have in this game. We only had to wait 4 minutes until we had the first scrum in the game, and this was always going to be an interesting proposition to see how the South Africans and All Blacks were going to match up in the scrums. Well, the New Zealanders fed that scrum, they won it. It was a little bit close though, they nearly got pinged by South Africa, but they got the ball out and Perenara was able to use it. And then in the resulting play from that scrum, we saw Fassi get into a little bit of trouble. He ended up with a yellow card, and in the 6th minute he was sitting down in the sin bin for 10 minutes. So the South Africans were down to 14 men early in the game, something that we were all hoping wasn't going to happen as far as viewers anyway. And then a minute later the All Blacks were able to capitalise on that. Cody Taylor had thrown the ball into the line out. The New Zealand set piece was working well, and then the ensuing maul got closer and closer to the goal line of the South Africans, and Cody Taylor ended up going over for the All Blacks' first score in this game. Damian McKenzie was able to get the conversion over, and after 7 minutes of the game it was 7 points to 0 to the All Blacks, exactly the start they were looking for. But the South Africans were impressive in their defensive display. Now down to 14 men, it was going to be interesting to see how the South Africans were going to play for the next 10 minutes of the game. Didn't have to wait long, because from the restart, Sasha Weinberg Ngoma Zulu put the ball out on the full, unfortunately, and the All Blacks tromped back to halfway to have a scrum. Now the All Blacks were looking like they were going to attack here, and they had a good opportunity to go down into the South African half. There was a kick put through. It looked like it was going to be a 50-22. The All Blacks got down there and put a lot of pressure on the Springboks. and the ball was there for TJ Perenara, and he started yelling at the referee. The referee didn't like it at all. He gave a penalty away against the All Black halfback. Perenara needs to keep his mouth closed. I talked about it in my pre-game video that he is a bit emotional on the field, and sometimes it cost him out. This one cost the All Blacks a penalty in a very good attacking opportunity, something Razor probably needs to have a chat to Perenara about after the game. Now in the 12th minute we saw something unwind that I talked about in my pre-game video. How was the All Black kicking in general play going to be? And were they going to offer the opportunity for South Africa to counter-attack? And we saw exactly that. Damien McKenzie put in a kick that wasn't very good. It went back to Cheslin Colby. He broke through and made a wonderful break through the New Zealand defence. He put a kick in for Arense out wide, and he nearly was able to score a try. So already after 12 minutes, the New Zealand kicks in general play, particularly when it comes to giving South Africa the opportunity to counter-attack, was almost costly to the state of South Africa scoring a try. It didn't happen on that occasion, but I was interested to see now what the New Zealanders were going to do moving forward in terms of that kicking strategy. So we got to the 14th minute of the first half, and I started to feel as though it was the first time that this momentum started to swing in the game. The New Zealanders had pretty much the first part of that 10 minutes of the game. They both had territory and they had a lot of momentum going forward. They camped themselves inside the South African half, and the South Africans had trouble even having a look at the New Zealand half. But at around that 14-minute mark, I thought that South Africa started to get a little bit on the board with getting more ball in possession. And we didn't have to wait long for South Africa to bounce back. As soon as they got some ball, they started putting pressure on the All Blacks. The All Blacks got pinged for not releasing in a tackle, and Sasha put the ball deep into the All Black territory, gave the South Africans an attacking line-out opportunity, which they did a pick and go, got close to the 9, and that man Bonami went over for a try. Or was it? I'll let you decide that. A lot of people in the media are already saying that he lost the ball as he was going down over the line. Let me know in the comments what you thought about that try, because those points were going to become very critical later in the game. But he went over, and there was some controversy because the All Blacks were talking to the referee about wanting it checked through the TMO. Sasha was going back to try and take the conversion. The clock was running down, and Sasha got pinged for not kicking the conversion attempt on time. So the try was unconverted. The All Blacks led by 7 points to 5 after 15 minutes of the game. Now, one of the things that I was watching in this game up until this stage was how the number 10s were going against each other, or in comparison to each other, I should say. And when I look at Sasha playing, it reminds me of watching Roger Federer play tennis. He's got lots of time, he's got lots of different options, he's got the trick shots, he's got the great passes, the kick is fantastic, he uses the banana kick as well, and his class was already starting to show in this particular game. Damien McKenzie, on the other hand, got caught out a couple of times early on when the pressure was coming on from the South Africans, and that was a strategy that I see that they were trying to play. Sia Kolisi was really big in putting pressure on the inside backs from New Zealand, and he was having a really good start to this game. Kolisi, he was into everything. And Jasavisa was also playing well in this game, his first game back in the South African colours for some time. So I thought he started off really well, and it was as the South Africans started to get back into the game that I started to see a bit of a swing, and I could see that the movement of Sasha was causing the All Blacks some problems. There was second guessing going on in the defensive line, and I thought this might become a problem as the All Black defence got a little bit tired. In the 20th minute, we saw Damien McKenzie decide to go for a cross-field kick. The ball was uncontestable for the All Blacks, and the South Africans ended up clearing the ball relatively easy. So again, McKenzie kicking to the opposition, the ball not being contestable enough for the All Blacks to have a chance to get the ball back. South Africa gets some free ball, and they go back into a position of strength on the field. Another question mark for me on whether that decision making from Damien McKenzie on that particular occasion was the best option. By the time we got to the 23rd or 24th minute of the game, one of the things that stuck out for me was the South Africans were doing very good at the breakdowns. They were disrupting it for the All Blacks. So when the All Blacks did get the ball, which was on quite a number of occasions, they weren't getting good ball going forward. They were getting scrappy ball. They were getting ball that was putting themselves under a little bit of pressure, and they weren't really able to get on the front foot. So I thought the South Africans were doing really, really well. Peter Steph-Toy was obviously one of those contributors to that process for the South Africans. Ben Jason Dixon was in there as well, doing some good tidy ups on the ground. But this was an area that was starting to impact the game, and I thought the South Africans were doing that really, really well. So in the 25th minute of the game, something interesting happened. Kobus Reinhardt got one of his box kicks almost charged down. And again, it was one of those areas that I said that we needed to look at in this game, and it gave the All Blacks the ball to be able to counter-attack again. So the general play kicking wasn't very accurate early on in this game. And I thought whatever team was able to get on top of that, they were going to start to get some advantages. How that was going to develop in the game, we had to wait and see. I mentioned him just a minute ago, Jasper Wiese, and in the 28th minute of the game, he did a very good steal for the Springboks, earned them a penalty from a All Black ruck, and it was 61 metres out from the goalpost, but no problem. Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu decided that he was going to have a kick for goal, and reminds us of the day of Lambie, I think it was, who got a monster kick over for the South Africans against the All Blacks in a previous game. But Sasha stood up, got the ball over, and it was still climbing when it went over the post, so he probably got it taken it from his own 22. A massive kick indeed. Put the South Africans in the lead by 8 points to 7 after 29 minutes of the first half. Yeah, it truly was a fantastic kick from Sasha, and just a huge boot he has on him. A couple of minutes later, 31st minute of the game, and it was that man again, Damian McKenzie, making another decision to go high with his general play kicking. Fassi took the ball under the high kick and was having it held with no problem at all. Again, the All Blacks didn't come away with anything from that uncontestable kick, and Fassi looked very, very good under the high ball. Then the next play from South Africa, a bit of a problem. Ben Jason Dixon popped up the ball in the tackle. It came out on the All Blacks side, and they decided to run it left down the left-hand side of the field. It went out through the entire back line, and Caleb Clark got a great pass from Beauden Barrett that put him away for a try. And against the little bit of run of play that the South Africans were having at that stage, the All Blacks went in for a try, and Clark got right over the line this time. 32 minutes on the clock. It was Damian McKenzie who stood up for the conversion attempt. He unfortunately missed it for the All Blacks, so the All Blacks were ahead by 12 points to 8, 32 minutes gone. But it was a bit of a seesawing game. It was a bit of an arm wrestle. It was pretty intense. Both teams were making a little bit of errors every now and again. The All Blacks' kicking strategy wasn't working well. The South Africans looked very good on defence. They were also putting in some very good attacks. I thought Sasha Feinberg was running the ball very, very well, causing some problems, looking like he was going to get through or put one of his outside backs in. We saw Damien Dialandi do a couple of errors in defence, gave the All Blacks some opportunities, but they didn't capitalise on it at that stage. It was a very, very tight game in that first 30 minutes. And after the All Blacks had that first momentum in the first 12 minutes or so, I think they would have been a little bit disappointed that they hadn't scored more points at that stage. I thought that was going to be critical as we started to head towards half-time. And then a bad mistake from the All Blacks from the kickoff. There was no one really wanting to get the ball, and Savia went in there to try and get it, and he coughed it up straight away because he wasn't expecting it. We saw this against Argentina, didn't we, with the All Blacks being not communicating well when it came to that kickoff restart, and it was showed its head again in this game. Bad mistake from the All Blacks with just 7 minutes to go before half-time. 35th minute of the game, South Africa had a penalty advantage. They were running the ball. It was going out the left-hand side. Jesse Creel had the ball. He had an opportunity to put his winger away, but unfortunately it was a forward pass, and South Africa were pulled back on that one. But they did have the penalty opportunity, and Sasha came up to have another kick at goal. So after 34 minutes of the first half, Sasha was successful with the penalty kick. The score came back to New Zealand leading by 12 points to 11. We've heard that score before, haven't we? But in reverse. And it was getting very tight as we headed towards half-time. In the 37th minute, Damien Dialandi went in and made a fantastic turnover for the South Africans off a Ioane tackle. And Rico Ioane got isolated in that tackle. He didn't have enough support and cover coming in, didn't release the ball fast enough, and Dialandi earned a well-earned penalty for South Africa. They decided to take the All Blacks on in the last couple of minutes of the first half and put some pressure on them to see whether or not they were able to put some more points on the board. The South Africans put together several phases of play, went close to the All Blacks line, but the ball popped out to Beauden Barrett, who kicked it out, thinking that the clock was going to tick over for half-time, but it didn't, and the South Africans got the ball into the line-out. Put a lot of pressure on the All Blacks in the last 60 seconds of the first half and allowed South Africa to have another go at the line. Unfortunately, the ball was knocked on by the Springboks during that phase of play, and we ended up going to half-time at 12 points to 11. to 11. Look, I thought the first half was really intense. It was a very much an arm wrestle. I thought the All Blacks got the better of the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game, but they weren't able to capitalise with more than one try. I thought that was something that I was definitely looking for, because I thought if they got away by a couple of tries early on, it'd put a lot more pressure on the Springboks. But as the Springboks came back in that first half, I was impressed by their diversity of play. They were able to choose how they were going to take it on with the All Blacks, and I thought Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu was playing fantastically well at number 10. He was really like he was orchestrating the play. Now this guy, of course, hasn't played that many games for the Springboks, but we have to think as he was coming up in the junior ranks, he was playing a lot of rugby, and he got a lot of experience in doing a lot of things at different stages of the games, and you could see that he was bringing this experience into this particular test match. I love the way that he was running with the ball, he was reading the defence, he was putting in some really good kicks, he was thinking strategically about his kicks, and in that first half I think Sasha came out on top between the two 10s. I thought he had a much better first half than what Damien McKenzie did. McKenzie didn't have a terrible first half, but I thought some of his kicking decisions and general play were poor. He missed that conversion attempt as well, which while New Zealand were ahead on the scoreboard, they could have been a little bit further out. So overall in the first half, I thought that Savia was having some good runs. He was lucky on a couple of occasions not to get penalised from the referee. He did get penalised, and New Zealand went into the half-time break being scolded a little bit with penalties, 7-3 in that first half. So they needed to watch out for that, otherwise they were going to see a yellow card in the second half. I thought South Africa came back into that first half very well. They got some momentum going, but it was through Sasha's control at number 10 that they were basically doing anything they wanted to do to put the All Blacks down the field and put pressure on them. The thing we saw in that first half was the counter-attacking of South Africa. I talked about it again in the pre-game show, and it was obvious what was happening every time the All Blacks put a kick down and South Africa were able to get their hands on the ball. Often it went to Colby or Fassi, and they both came back and returned the ball with interest. They looked dangerous when they were bringing the ball back, and I think New Zealand had to sit down at half-time and work out a way that they were going to do it. I think at half-time Scott Robertson would have been pleased, but also a little bit disappointed. I think he would have wanted some more points on the board at half-time for the All Blacks to go into the second half, knowing they're going to have the bomb squad coming at them. And also the altitude issue, was that going to run down the clock a bit for them at the back end of the second half? I think Rassie would have been fairly pleased because the South Africans were able to repel the All Blacks' onslaught in that first 15 minutes, and then they were able to get themselves in the game, and I thought they managed the game very well from that point of view. They didn't let the All Blacks take that momentum. The All Blacks earned that momentum. But after that momentum started to shift, you could then see the South Africans starting to climb into the game, and they started to make some very good decisions. The scrums weren't as convincing as I thought they would be for the Springboks. The All Blacks held their own as far as that part of set piece go, and the All Black line-out was working well in that first half as well. South Africa, on the other hand, were having mixed results with their line-out, and I think that'll be something that Rassie was having a look at half-time. Eben Etzebeth had come on in the 25th minute of that first half for his 125th cap in the Springbok jersey. Only 2 behind Victor Mayfield now, so he hasn't got much to go, and I'm sure he's going to get that in this Rugby Championship this year. So a fantastic milestone for Eben Etzebeth, but he also played very well when he came on the field. Ben Jason Dixon was the one that was replaced, so Ruan Norkia stayed on the field, and there was a bit of a shifting around because we saw Peter Steph-Toy going into the flanker role, and that changed again as we got into the second half. So a good first half of rugby. It was more of an arm wrestle than an open game, both teams feeling each other out, counter-attacking where possible. So the All Blacks went to the break scoring 2 tries to 1, Cody Taylor and Caleb Clark versus the Bonami one, and it was going to be interesting. I thought this game was going to open up in the second half, and of course, as I said in my pre-game show, the last 20 minutes of this game was going to be decisive one way or the other. So the second half got underway, and boy, what a way did it start. The South Africans were looking at running the ball. They had a fantastic backline play going on, and the ball was going to come out to Sia Kolisi, but unfortunately for him, Geordie Barrett was there, and he got the pass, and the pass had come from Damien Diolande straight into Geordie Barrett's breadbasket. He took off with about 45 metres to go. He out-sprinted the South African bats to get to the try line, and the All Blacks started the second half exactly the way that they wanted to by putting a try on the board. It was a great opportunist try, but Barrett read the play and he was able to capitalise on the execution. Now Damian McKenzie got the conversion over, so the All Blacks jumped out to 19 points to 11 after 42 minutes of the game. And then something really crazy and stupid happened for the All Blacks. After that conversion attempt, McKenzie went back into the 22 and the South Africans kicked off, and none of the All Blacks protected or got the ball. It was Damian McKenzie that had to go in and get the ball from the restart. He ended up popping it up, and the All Blacks were on the back foot. So good work from South Africa. Poor decision making and communication again from the All Blacks from the restart. It's a part of their game that they're not doing well at the moment, and it's something that Razor and the crew need to take a look at. So before the line out could get underway though, Rassie did what Rassie does. He pulled the ripcord and on came the bomb squad plus Grant Williams. So that was a really interesting move, I thought. Was it going to be too early in the game? Well, we'd have to wait and find out. But it gave the All Blacks an opportunity now to get settled in with the bomb squad on the field. They knew it was going to happen sooner or later. Then over the next 5 minutes, we saw a penalty kick to both teams that changed the scoreboard. First of all, it was Sasha getting one for the Springboks. That brought them back to 19 points to 14. And then Damian McKenzie got one for the All Blacks, so that put them out to 22 points to 14. 48th minute of the game, a big play happened. The ball came down to Rico Ioane. He made a big run, and Arendse got caught in the tackle. He got his head right on his hip, basically knocked him out straight away. He went to the ground and couldn't get back up, so he ended up going off the field, and there was going to be a rejink of the South African backline. And this was going to be interesting because when you have a 6-2 split, how was this going to work? So we saw Andre Pollard come on, we saw Jesse Creel go out to the wing, and we saw a bit of a rejink of the South African backline. Andre Pollard ended up going into playing into more of a 12 position. So the Springboks were having all their backs on the field. We still had over 30 minutes to go in this game. It was going to be very interesting to see what would happen now. We got to the 50th minute mark and it was time for Ruan Norkia to go off, and he went off the field, and we saw Quagga Smith come on. I love Quagga Smith. I think he's a fantastic player. He can cause problems all over the place when you're least expecting him, and compared to some of the other big, tall, lanky brutes in the South African forwards, he's one of those old school players that come on and can play utility across anywhere. So really enjoy watching Quagga Smith come on. A minute later, 51 minute of the game, we saw Damian McKenzie putting up another high ball from general kick, and this time it was Fassi under the ball again. No problem at all under the high ball, and I thought Damian McKenzie needed to stop doing this. If he was going to kick, he needed to get territory, find open spaces behind the South Africans. But when you've got uncontestable kicks going up and you've got someone like Fassi who's obviously very good under the high ball, this is not going to be the play the All Blacks need to take to South Africa, and I was starting to wonder whether this was going to cost the All Blacks in this game. However, a minute later I was proved wrong, because the All Blacks got a great attacking opportunity again, and Caleb Clark went in for a fantastic try down the left hand side of the field. And this was a really good try by the All Blacks, and it came against the little bit of run of play there that the Springboks were putting on. So the All Blacks went out to 27 points to 17. So it was a really good try to the All Blacks to Clark. Unfortunately, Damian McKenzie missed that conversion, so the All Blacks were now out to 27 points to 17, 10 points, and just over 20 odd minutes to go in the game. Were the All Blacks going to be able to hold on, or were we going to see a comeback from South Africa and the importance of that bomb squad? We had to wait and see. In the next couple of minutes, we saw two errors from the All Blacks. First one, Beauden Barrett was taking the ball back into his 22, kicked the ball out on the full, thinking he was back in the 22, but it had actually been passed by Perenara back into the 22, and the South Africans were able to get on attack there from that ball. The All Blacks were able to clear that one, but then South Africa came back again, and we saw a great kick from Sasha Feinberg and Goma Zulu again. It was a little bit of a miskick, I think, and Will Jordan went to collect the ball close to his 22, and he knocked the ball on. And this gave South Africa the momentum once again. 57th minute of the game, Tamaiti Williams went off for the All Blacks. Thought he had a really good game. He held up his part in the scrums throughout this game and went head to head for nearly 60 minutes. A very good display from him for a young 24-year-old. Thought he played very, very well, and Tuanga Fassi came on to replace him. Then the South Africans went on attack. They looked like they were getting very close to scoring, and unfortunately for Grant Williams, who'd come on as a replacement for Cobus Reinhardt, spewed up the ball and gave the All Blacks the opportunity to clear the ball away. So that was a little bit unfortunate for the Springboks at that particular stage of the game. The All Blacks were starting to try and control the game with a 10-point lead, which I thought was going to be a mistake, and it was Geordie Barrett who fell into the trap next. Put a high ball up, back to Fassi again, and what did the Fassi do? Brought the ball back on a fantastic counter-attack. Shaking my head I was, looking at the screen thinking, why are the All Blacks keep doing this? They've got to find open spaces with their general play kicks, otherwise the Springboks are going to come back and hurt them. And that's exactly what Fassi did on this occasion. And then in the 63rd minute, another TJ Perenara brain fade. He was yelling at the base of the ruck for the All Blacks to get the ball out. The ball was sitting right in front of him. He could have gone in, but instead of standing there and yelling, the South Africans came around and stole the ball at the breakdown. 63rd minute of the game, a very important lapse by DJ Perenara, and subsequently I think at that stage Razor Robertson had decided that it was time to make things change as it was, and we were going to see a big 10 minutes of the game as we saw Cortez Ratama come on for TJ Perenara. And we also saw Mark Talia come on the field as well for the All Blacks. So this was going to be interesting. How were the All Blacks going to be able to hold together for the next 13 or 15 minutes of the game? 67th minute of the game, and we were going to see over the next couple of minutes a very decisive moment in the game. Tuanga Fassi, who had just come on for the All Blacks, had got pinged for a yellow card. He was sent off for 10 minutes. So that meant he was going to go off at the most critical time for the All Blacks. He was only going to come back on with about 3 minutes left in the game. And the All Blacks were going to have to survive with 14 men against the Springboks. Here we go again, we Kiwi said. And that's exactly what happened. So of course the South Africans are very good at doing this. They take advantage of these opportunities. And it was only 1 minute later that they got very close to the All Blacks line. Pick and go by the South African forwards time and time again. The All Blacks simply ran out of defenders. And Quagga Smith, that man that I just spoke about, came on and scored a fantastic try for the Springboks. So the Springboks were bouncing back in this game, and as we had all thought, that last 20 minutes was going to be a telling period of the game for the All Blacks. 27-17 quickly became 27-22. Sasha got the conversion over, so we were back to 27-24, just a 3-point game. Ethan Blackadder was taken off for the All Blacks at that stage. I thought he had a crack of a game, played very, very well, tackled his heart out, was in the breakdowns, and I'm becoming a little bit of a fan of Ethan Blackadder. I wasn't over the previous few games, but he's really stood up, and I've seen what he did against Argentina. I saw what he did against the Springboks today, so he's going into one of my favourite players for the All Black list. And we saw Sam Dowie come on, the big Auckland lock, who of course is from Christchurch. So that was the changes the All Blacks made, but the South Africans have got the momentum back in the game now, and it was only a 3-point game. We were down to the last 13 minutes. What was going to happen? Next few minutes were very interesting because we went into a bit of a kicking duel, and I thought this was a mistake by the All Blacks, and the reason for that was it was ultimately the Springboks were trying to get territory out of this kicking duel, and I thought if the All Blacks had kept ball in hand and started to put pressure on the Springboks by playing 3 or 4 phases and then kicking the ball across field, they could have had a better result. But this kicking duel ended up with the South Africans on the front foot. It started to sway the momentum in the game, and the one-man advantage that the Springboks had at this stage of the game started to tell, because those tiring All Blacks, who had already been making a lot of tackles chasing around those South Africans' backs during the rest of the game, were starting to look tired, and they started to open up a few holes for the Springboks to run into, particularly the bomb squad who'd come on and had fresher legs. And by the time we got to the 74th minute of the game, it was just a matter of time, I thought, before the All Blacks were going to get opened up. The Springboks were deep on attack, and that man Grant Williams, who'd come on, went over and scored a great try for the Springboks after their forward pressure had put them very, very close to the line. So we'd had Quagga Smith come on for the Springboks from the bomb squad and score a try. We'd had Grant Williams come on as a replacement and score a try. So these reserves for South Africa were making a difference in this game, as many of us had expected. So after the All Blacks had that 10-point lead, the South Africa had hit back, and they'd now gone into the lead by 29 points to 27 with the kick to come. It was successful from Sasha, 31 points to 27, and the Springboks just had to hang on now for the next 6 minutes of this game. but the All Blacks were going to throw everything at them. 2 minutes later, in the 76th minute of the game, Sasha had a penalty opportunity to put it out of touch for the All Blacks. Unfortunately for South Africa, he missed that one, so it was still game on with a few minutes to go. We saw Tuanga Fasi return to the field with 3 minutes to go. So was that going to make a difference for the All Blacks, or was it too late? The answer was it was going to be too late, because the South Africans were able to control the last couple of minutes of this game, and it was that man Grant Williams that ended up with the ball, and he ran it over the touchline as the clock and the hooter sounded for the end of this epic encounter. And what a game it was, a fantastic game of rugby. Of course, as a New Zealander, I'm disappointed, but the South Africans did what they do. They came back in that second half. The bomb squad made a difference, but also the number of players on the field. I think when Tuanga Fasi went off with that yellow card, which was his own fault, that it really swung the game in the South Africans' favour, because the All Blacks' defensive line was getting tired, and it was starting to show up, and the forward strength from the Springboks were putting raid after raid on the All Black line, and they were playing exceptionally well. So a deserved win to the Springboks. I thought the All Blacks unlucky. They didn't get enough points, I thought, in the first half. I said in my pre-game show that that's where I thought the All Blacks had to win this game. And if they were able to get another 5 or 10 points, that could have been a big difference and a bridge too far for the Springboks to come back. But they did come back, and they came back well, and hats off to them. Peter Steph Toy, another fantastic game. Eben Etzebeth played huge when he came on, started to control the lineouts, although it did go a little bit awry in the second half, I thought. Let me know in the comments if you're a South African fan. I think the lineouts is something that needs improving on. I like Grant Williams on the field more so than Cobus Reinhardt. I'd like to see Grant Williams starting. I think him and Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu would be absolutely brilliant together. They need time together. They need to build that combination. But I think Grant Williams is such a threat from halfback that he can open up any defensive line, and having Sasha outside of him would cause defences all sorts of headaches. So that's something I'd like to see from South Africa. For the rest, I thought Deolandi and Creel had a good game. Again, the most experienced pairing in Springbok centres history, and they did very, very well. Colby, I thought, had a good game without being magical in this game. And I thought Fassi had a really good game at fullback. He was great on the counter-attack. New Zealand played into his hands by giving him some high balls, and he was able to show his brilliance with feet of foot and able to dance around some of the All Blacks and break through gaps on a couple of occasions. So I think he has to be a starter for the South Africans in the second game in Cape Town. I think the bomb squad made the difference in this game. I thought the pressure that the South Africans put in that 60th and 70th minute of the game was the difference. So that 20-minute period where the All Blacks didn't win the competitions, the breakdowns, they got too many penalties against them. They were lucky not to have another 2 players put in the bin. I thought Savia should have gone to the bin at one stage, and I think the All Blacks were lucky that they only went down to 14 men. So I think discipline is something the All Blacks need to look at, but that discipline comes from the pressure that South Africa were putting on the All Blacks constantly in that second half. So I think South Africa turned around a half-time deficit very well in this game. They finished with a storming solution at the end by giving those players who'd come on as reserves the opportunity to score those tries, which they made through their forward pressure. A fantastic result for the Springboks. So what about the All Blacks? Well, it's not all gloom and doom. I thought they played very well in this game. They just lost the momentum in that period in the second half, which was critical, and the South Africans got too much pressure on them. The All Blacks were looking good when they were going out wide in that first half. They were picking holes in the South African defence, and the way that Geordie Barrett and Rico Ioane were picking little passes to get each other through gaps, that was working. The general kicks and play by Damien McKenzie were not good enough, and nor were the ones from Beauden Barrett in this game either. It gave the opportunity to South Africa to counter-attack, and we saw too much of that in this game for the Springboks. This was something that I thought Razor Robertson would have had in his wheelhouse from day one, was not to give possession to the Springboks on the counter-attack. That made it easy for them to come back. So that's something that needs to be cleaned up before they go to Cape Town. Otherwise, the Springboks are going to do it all over again. TJ Perenara, for me, I'd like to see Cortez Ratama in there. I just think he's emotionally calmer than Perenara, and given the opportunity to play with McKenzie like he does at the Chiefs, I think this could be the combination the All Blacks need to go forward with. But we'll wait and see what the verdict is from Scott Robertson. So far, he's stuck with TJ Perenara. It's not a decision that I agree with. Out of the All Black wings in this game, I thought Caleb Clark had a very good game. He scored 2 tries, of course, but again, he looked good when he had the ball in hand. He looked dangerous. He looked big. He looked decisive. He was breaking through the tackles. Will Jordan on the other side, though, didn't really get too many chances in open play. Had a bit of a muff up of that ball that came through from Sasha Feinberg, and he got caught, but he was marked very well by the South Africans, I thought. You can only do it as good as your defence will let you do, and the Springboks were really making sure that Will Jordan didn't get into this game. So it was well played by the South Africans again. So the South Africans, definitely good for the victory, I thought. Take away the controversy, away Bonami's try. I think they deserved the win. They came back well in the second half, but I would sound an air of warning. The All Black team is not too far away, as we expect from this team, and I think it's going to be all to play for in Cape Town. I think the All Blacks are going to go away and learn a couple of things, particularly those players that haven't played against the Springboks before in this kind of competition. I think this was a big learning curve for the All Blacks to be ahead by 10 points and to blow that lead. They'll be disappointed, and that's something they'll be talking about in the debrief. What did they do wrong after they were ahead by 10 points? They gave away too many kicks that didn't have any strategic intent or result, I thought, for the game. So there we go. There's my wrap on this fantastic game of rugby. It didn't disappoint. Played in fantastic conditions on a fantastic field at Ellis Park with an amazing crowd. I hope you all enjoyed it. Now I want to hear from you. So get onto the comments and tell me what you thought. Tell me what you thought of my summary in terms of, did I hit all the key points? Or was there something in the game that I've missed that you should talk about? And let all the rest of the viewers know here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Now, please don't forget, I'm doing this channel in my retirement. I could be sitting on the beach drinking cocktails every day, but I choose to do this in all seriousness because I want to play a small role in helping the great game of rugby grow across the world. Here are some ways that you can support my channel. So before you click off my video today, can you please take an opportunity to look at these different ways, these 5 ways that you can help me on my channel. Choose 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 and see whether or not you can support me in trying to move my goal forward. Now, I'll be back again soon with plenty more content. There's lots to dissect from this game, so I'll be making a video about different aspects of this game over the coming days, so watch out for those ones as well. Australia against Argentina this afternoon. I'm going to be off to watch that one very shortly, so I'll give you my report on that one as well. So I hope to see you around here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Thank you very much for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. I love the comments from all over the world. We've got a fantastic community we're growing here on Inside Rugby with Mark. I'm enjoying it every day, so that's also adds to the fun. I'll see you all again soon. Until then, stay well, stay safe. Let the hearts come back to beating mode again, and we can get ready for the game next week in Cape Town. Until next time, it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Stay well, stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.